Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Final Cut, an Overwatch League recap, opinion, and preview show hosted by me, Coins George. I am so excited to bring you guys the first episode ever. I plan on doing this every single week. This season of Overwatch League, I'm so excited for the league. The first week was already amazing. It blew me out of the water. I guess since it is the first episode, I'll introduce myself a bit. My real name is John George. My history in esports starts about 3 years ago when I started watching video games on Twitch. It started with Hearthstone, got a bit into League of Legends, and then when Overwatch came out, I really got hooked by Overwatch esports and just the game in general. Honestly, I enjoy playing Overwatch a lot. And I feel like it's the first game that I really understand and I'm able to analyze, which is why I'm doing the show on it. I interned for Echo Fox. That's my one claim to fame in esports so far. I had a weekly podcast for them called the Fox Den. But they don't have an Overwatch team, so this truly is my first experience in Overwatch esports, and I'm super excited about it. I'm super psyched, and I hope you guys are as excited about Overwatch League as I am, because I enjoy watching these games so much. The Final Cut is going to consist of 3 acts each week, 3 acts just like a movie. Let's get right into the first act, which is the recap. So every single week I'll start with the recapping last week's games, of course. We'll do that by starting out looking at the Pacific Division. We'll take a look at the standings. There's one big surprise at the top of these standings, and that is the Los Angeles Valiant are undefeated, not only record-wise, but map-wise. 7-0 on maps, 2-0 overall. They do have one tie on a map. They tied Horizon against the Dallas Fuel, but I think this team is for real, guys. Soon came out there and he shattered my expectations. I've always thought Soon was a great player. I never thought he was like an elite, like MVP type player. He's been great for France. He's been great for Rogue, but he came out there and he just blew my expectations out of the water. He truly overperformed this week, and that was MVP type caliber performance against both the Shock and the Dallas Fuel. Soon did really well this week, and the Valiant have a well put together team. I'm excited to see their matches this week because they have a hard schedule I'll get to later. Number 2 is, of course, the Dynasty. They're the team to beat, 2-0. They did drop a map to the Dallas Fuel in a really close game, and I think the Dallas Fuel is another highlight on these standings. I don't think people expected them to be 0-2, and at the bottom, they did have a hard schedule this week, but they only took one map. So let's start by looking at the Fuel's games individually this week. They started out the game of the week, in my opinion, the Dallas Fuel versus the Seoul Dynasty. This was a very close game. If you're going to rewatch a game, you're going to rewatch this one, please. Dallas ended up taking the first map, but was unable to take any of the maps after that. This game was super close. Dallas didn't have Coco at all this series because he was sick. And Dallas stuck with Seoul this entire series, except Ilios. I would say Ilios. Dallas looked a little rough on Ilios, but so did every Texas team. I'm talking about Houston, and I'll talk about that more later. Dallas didn't take any points on Ilios this weekend, but 2-1 against Seoul, you can't complain about that. And that tie against Numbani too. I really don't think people should be too upset about the Dallas Fuel's performance in this game. But maybe they have more of a right to be upset about this game against the Los Angeles Valiant. Dallas did look a bit messy at times in this match. It was super close again. I know Valiant won overall on maps 3-0. They tied on Horizon. Um, Junkertown was an insanely fun match to watch, and Dallas was so close to winning it. Just a tiny, tiny little mistake. I don't know how much you can even call it a mistake, because it would have been hard. It would have been hard to win this map, even though Mickey was the only one on the point. Ended up dying here, as you'll see, and they ended up losing this map because of it. Overtime ticks down real fast. But the Dallas Fuel did look a bit iffy at times. Of course, once again on Ilios, unable to do anything, really. Or it might have been Oasis, I can't remember. But on Control, once again, just couldn't do too much. And then you had on Numbani, they definitely looked a lot rougher. Lost that map by a good amount and let Soon back cap. If you want to watch something cool, go watch the highlight of Soon back capping this point, the point on Numbani. That is something that must have tilted Dallas off the earth. But the Dallas Fuel, I know people are worried about them, especially fans, and they have a lot of them. But I wouldn't worry too much about the Fuel. They had a hard schedule this week. Valiant performed out of their mind once again. Just the start, that's just 2 of 40 games total. They could go 38-2. All right, the other teams I did talk about, the Gladiators, right in the middle, like I thought they would be, 1-1, 4-4 on maps. This team looks right in the middle. San Francisco Shock, they're at 1-1, 3-5 on maps, but they did have the easiest matchup against the Shanghai Dragons, and they still did not look good while playing the Shanghai Dragons. I think this was an embarrassing game. If you want to watch the worst game of Overwatch I saw this week, it was the Shock versus the Dragons. These two teams just, instead of trying to win, it seemed like they were both just attempting to lose. It was embarrassing to watch. I expected Baby Bay and the Shock and Sleepy to be much better after their preseason performance. They were not. That's all I got for the Pacific Division. Let's move on to the Atlantic Division. So the Atlantic Division includes 2 Korean teams that are both on top, 2-0 each, the Excelsior and the Spitfire. Spitfire did drop a map, the first map they played this weekend against the Florida Mayhem. And Florida actually looked a lot better than I think people thought they would, even though they went 0-2 and only won 1 map. On that map, they looked like they had potential. They really did. They were running some written up plays, I could tell, on the first map against London, Dorado, that is. They were running some written up plays, and I think this is a well-coached team because that was a good play they ran. I'll get more into that play later, of course. Let's talk about the Fusion. I don't think anyone expected the Fusion to be 1-1. I think people expected them to be 0-2. They had a hard schedule this week against Houston and then the Spitfire. But they ended up beating the Outlaws in a 5-game series. It was a very close, highly contested match. I don't think people had any expectations for the Fusion as they weren't there at the preseason. They got 4 days of practice before this. Everyone else got like a good month or a month and a half. They got 4 days, and they came out and beat the Houston Outlaws in 5 games. If anything, that just tells me that these people have extreme potential. Carpe and Shadowburn, a great DPS duo, and then Fraggy and Poco. I think that those are the 2 that really shattered our expectations. I don't think we expected these 2 to be that good of a tank duo, but they are already just really working well together. And of course, you have Boombox, who's just a great Zenyatta. We saw a lot of great Zenyatta play, and Boombox is one of those people. Expect more from the Fusion. Once they get more practice, this team, sky's the limit for this team. As far as the Outlaws go, all I have to say about them is they need a Tracer. They need Jake and Linkser to perform a little better. They need a Tracer. They really stunk it up on control maps this week. A lot like Dallas, those Texas teams just could not perform on control. But Houston's reason is a lot easier to point out, and it's that Clockwork is their tracer, and Clockwork only comes in for control. He's cold, and he just doesn't compare to these other tracers as much. Because most of these tracers that the other teams have are their team's best DPS player as well. But Clockwork doesn't fit in to that category, really. Let's talk about the New York Excelsior, who put on an absolute show this weekend, specifically Pine. He put on a show. That red pinkish-haired man, I'm impressed. He only came in for 2 maps on the weekend. He came in on control both times, and he looked absolutely nasty. I don't know why they are not playing him on every single map. They've dropped 2 maps, and I believe it's because he wasn't out there. I want to see how long New York can go without dropping a control map, because it's clear that New York is going to play Pine on every control map. I want to see if they can go the 40-0 on control. I want to see if they can do it. Which leads me into our play of the week. Who had the most flashiest play? It was Pine, of course. This was against Houston. 5 kills, and Houston was winning this fight too. This essentially won them this point for New York. Houston had a 6v4 advantage, but Pine said, that does not matter to me, and he just killed everybody. Pine is very good, and there comes the dab. Here it comes. Boom. All right. So that's our play of the week this week. Pine deserves it. There's another play of the week. What? But this one's called the Golden Coin. I'm going to give out the Golden Coin to one player each week. And it's not for the player that has the flashiest, coolest, mechanically skilled play. It's for the player who makes the smartest decision of the week. It's usually going to go to a tank or a support player. Sometimes DPS can get it. But it's going to go to someone who won the team the game, but it wasn't on necessarily the most flashy play that everyone's paying attention to. Well, the first Golden Coin, it is on a flashy play, but the Golden Coin isn't going to go to the person who made the flashy play. It's going to go to a person that's honestly the whole reason why everyone's talking about this play. Philadelphia Fusion's Fraggy gets the first Golden Coin. This Diva Bomb on the last point of Dorado versus Houston won Fusion the game. Poco had some crazy Diva Bombs this weekend, and everyone was giving him credit for this one. But if you look closely, this Diva Bomb wouldn't have done anything if it weren't for Fraggy's Winston Primal Raging and knocking everyone into that bomb. Fraggy more than deserves this week's Golden Coin. Poco, you were great at Diva Bombs, but you wouldn't have killed anybody if it weren't for Fraggy pushing everybody into that bomb. That was awesome and won him the map. Probably won him this series too, honestly. Might as well just look at it one more time. There goes the bomb. Fraggy jumps over. Primal Rages, pushes everybody into it. Congratulations to Fraggy on the first ever Golden Coin. Let's move into power rankings, though. Every single week I'm going to do power rankings. And power rankings aren't just straight up standings based off record. They are who I think the best teams are. Not based off record, but based off performance. So at the top you can see 3 Korean teams. You can see I am smart. This is a legitimate show. These power rankings will make sense. These aren't just hot takes, guys. I did put 3 Korean teams at the top because they deserve it. At number 4 is Valiant, though. I think they definitely deserve that number 4 spot after beating Fuel and just looking straight up amazing this week. The Fuel is at number 5 despite being 0-2. I do think the Fuel lost to 2 top teams this week, and they still looked really, really good while losing. Just a little bit, got into their heads a little bit against the Valiant, if I'm going to be honest. I think this team is obviously going to come back from this hard first week. Next, we got the next tier. I like to call the 6 through 9ers. They are the next tier, technically. Um, Gladiators, Uprising, Fusion, and then Outlaws. I have the Outlaws at the bottom. I think everyone has this tier kind of different. I have the Outlaws at the bottom. It's just going to be hard for them to win games if they can't win on control, let's be honest. And then I have the Gladiators at the top of that. I do think until the Gladiators played two ends of the spectrum. If you can see on these rankings, they faced the Dragons and then they faced the Dynasty. They looked bad against the Dynasty and they looked amazing against the Dragons. So it's really hard to gauge where the Gladiators are right now, but based off preseason performance and how I see them as a team, I still think they're performing very well and they have the pieces to earn that final playoff spot. Uprising, really well coached team, looked really good this week. I barely talked about them. There's not much to say until they face until they do some more. I think they're right at the 7th spot right now, and the Fusion will obviously get higher with more practice. Their potential is through the roof, even though they did lose 4-0 to Spitfire. Mayhem, Shock, and Dragons are in the next tier. The reason I have the Mayhem over the Shock is I did see the Mayhem actually do some good things this weekend, and I did not see the Shock do some good things this weekend. I saw Shock do a lot of bad things this weekend. And the Dragons, of course, at the bottom. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. So now let's move on to the second act of the final cut, which is the opinion. So for the opinion, I will be spewing my opinions about teams, things in the league, players. This week, mainly about things in the league, because I don't think we've seen enough from the teams for me to create hot takes from them quite yet. We'll get there. So let's start with the first week of OWL, the successes, the failures. It's going to be hard to find failures. I thought I would be able to find some more failures, but I just have some minor grievances, really. I was lucky enough to go with my brother out to Los Angeles for this first week. As I said before, I go to school in Butler, so I'm not in that area, but I was able to fly out for the weekend just for the first week, and it was awesome experiencing it. The production, the casters, the analysis, everything is just on another level. It's amazing. I cannot stress enough. Everything's a success on that side. As we know, Blizzard loves, with their games, with everything, Blizzard loves to take their time and give you a high quality product. That is exactly what they did with the Overwatch League. I guess as far as casters go, the only sort of grievance I can air is Semler was really good for his first time casting, but he still made some mistakes, and of course that's going to happen. It's his first time casting Overwatch, but he was actually really good for his first time. I enjoyed listening to him, and so that's honestly a very minor grievance because he still did a really good job. Just some things he can improve on. Another minor grievance from me as far as analysis goes is stats. We got a lot of stats this weekend, but there's a certain type of stat I want more of, and that is comparisons. We saw it with Control after the Outlaws Excelsior game. We actually got a comparison of Pine versus Linkser. Pine and Linkser stats side by side. We need that because there's this random amount of damage dealt or damage healed. All these stats that make no sense when you just put them alone. But if you compare two players who are playing the same hero, that is when that's when there's a story behind the stats. We need more stories behind the stats. Comparisons are a great way to do it. Another thing I liked about the stats was what Puckett called the Big Hooker Club. They gave us a club of people who had 60% hook accuracy and above. We need more of those clubs. We should have a club for every hero, is what I'm thinking at this point. A club for every hero and more comparisons. That's my minor grievance with stats. And of course, I really want stats to be on the website and accessible to everybody because I want to see the leaders. I want to see the leaderboards. But that's going to come with time. And I will be super excited the day that comes because this show will get 1,000 times better as well. Those are my biggest successes and failures so far. I guess there's one failure that everybody else is talking about that perhaps I should talk about, and that is the map pool. Slasher. This isn't his full tweet below right here. This isn't his full tweet. It's the first half. He tweeted, "We're 4 days into the Owl season and I'm already bored by the same selected map every series." It is, you can see I have a picture of Junkertown right here. People are upset. They want to see more variety. And here's the side I take on that. Harsha, San Francisco Shock's analyst, tweeted in response to this that it would be super hard for the teams to practice 16 maps, that it's already hard for them to practice 8 maps as is. To practice all 16 maps would be insane. I agree with that. And I think the quality of play would go down an extreme amount if we saw all those maps in play. When they practice a smaller map pool, they're able to actually create plays for these specific maps and kind of discover the nooks and crannies of the map too. I'll have 2 examples from both of those coming up. I think the first example, when we talk about the map pool, is all the nooks and crannies, and something we saw on Temple of Anubis a ton is using May to get Orisa up on that little platform that you saw the Shanghai Dragons did right there. And tons of teams did this, and I honestly don't know if people would have discovered this if the map pool was bigger. They had more time with Temple of Anubis, so they were able to discover something like this. And of course, as in this clip, someone like the Gladiators were able to figure out how to absolutely destroy that strategy. With map pools, the smaller map pool, people are able to find the nooks and crannies, but they're also able to write plays. This is the Florida Mayhem with their written play on Dorado. I guarantee they wrote this out. They have Widowmaker going on the flank. They have Swoosh and Logix on Tracer, Winston going from the left, and everyone else going from the middle, all of them diving onto that Mercy. This is just awesome. When I saw this, I was like, this is awesome. I turned over to my brother and I said, they wrote that up. They wrote that up. And it's so cool to see teams writing things up based off maps. With more of a map pool, it's going to be harder for them to write up so many plays. And I think we saw we did see a huge variance of maps, we saw a huge variance of strategies on these maps. And that was super fun for me to see. It was fun to see Dallas Fuel come out with 4 tanks sometimes. It was fun to see all these different strategies and how each team approaches the map. In 5 weeks, will I still be excited by that variance? I don't know. I'll tell you guys then. But so far, I'm super. I've enjoyed all the strategy coming out of these maps. And honestly, there's something that Doa likes to call a brawl, and I think we would see a lot more brawls. It's when everyone's just fighting on the point and you can't tell what's going on, and those are the worst spectating moments in Overwatch. And I think the more we practice the same maps over and over again, the less we're going to see of brawls, which are my least favorite part of watching Overwatch, because you have no clue what's going on and you just have to watch the kill feed. But I love these set plays like the Florida Mayhem had, and I love these nooks and crannies strategies, as I like to call them, that everyone had on Temple of Anubis. Anyways, that's my opinion for the week. Of course, it's just my opinion. It's not right or wrong, although I like to think it's right. Let's move on to Act 3, the preview, the final act. This week, we have some really exciting games. Every single week, I'm going to preview 6 games for you guys, 6 of the 12, and I'm going to say if you're going to watch any games, you're going to watch these ones right here. If you can't tell from the schedule, watch Thursday. Watch Thursday. Every single game on Thursday is awesome. It starts out with the Dallas Fuel against the Houston Outlaws. Of course, the Texas rivalry. It was awesome in the preseason to watch these two teams go head-to-head. But now there are some more implications. Both of these teams are 0-2. Both of these teams have yet to win a control map. Both of these teams want to win badly because no one expected them to be 0-2. No one expected them to be winless at this point. But one of them will be 0-3. One of them will be 1-2. And it should be an extremely fun match to watch. These are two fan favorite teams, and I'm excited anytime this rivalry comes up. Definitely watch this one. And right after that, we have the Excelsior versus the Valiant, two other top tier teams here. The Valiant proved themselves to be the best Western team last week, as everyone is saying. Well, they're being immediately thrown into the wolves. They're facing two Korean teams this week. They have the Excelsior, the Pine show up first. It should be super exciting to watch Pine and Soon battle it out. I think these two teams will put on a show, and that night finishes off with probably the worst match that day, but still a good one, the Fusion versus the Los Angeles Gladiators. Both of these teams are most likely going to be fighting for that final playoff spot come playoff time. And I think this is going to be a huge battle. We're going to see a more well-practiced Fusion team going up against the Gladiators team who just got their asses handed to them against the Seoul Dynasty. Both teams want to win this game. They both just got their asses handed to them by Korean teams, actually. 4-0'd. So the battle of the 4-0s versus Korean teams is on Thursday night. Friday, I think this is probably has an easy potential to go 4-0. But I put it on here for the upset potential. Seoul versus Boston. We know Boston prepares well against teams. They're very well coached. Could they possibly be well coached enough to beat Seoul, or at least take a map off them? I don't think so. But I still put that on there just in case it happens. Then on Friday night, the final game on Friday, Dallas continues their brutal schedule and faces off against the London Spitfire. This should be a very good one, especially if Dallas just comes off a win against Houston. They're confident. I'm looking forward to this one, especially to see where London ranks among the top teams. We haven't seen London have too much of a tough schedule. Even in the preseason, they faced two easy teams, and here they're facing two easy teams. Or the past 2 weeks, they faced two easy teams. This week, London is facing hard teams. Speaking of that, Saturday, the first game on Saturday, the Valiant face off against those Londoners I was just talking about. Both of these teams have the hardest schedules this week. They're going to both come off a Fuel and Excelsior game, and they are going to be probably pretty tired, but they're going to be ready for this one. If Valiant can come out of this weekend with at least one win, I will be impressed. And I'm super excited to see where the Spitfire rank amongst the good teams, because they rarely play against the good teams. All right. That was the first episode of the Final Cut. I'm super excited to bring you guys a new episode every single week. This one is a bit later, coming out a bit later in the week than I usually want to do it. Just some travel stuff going on this week, of course, because I was in LA. So I believe it will either come out Sunday nights or Monday mornings. I'll let you guys know. But I definitely want to work on this Sundays after the week's over. That's my most free time. So I'm excited to bring you guys this every single week. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next time.